All right, so are you ready to jump in the time machine?
Always up for a little chronological adventure. Where are we headed?
Back to 1607, Jamestown settlement. First permanent English colony in America. We're diving deep into the story you probably only think you know.
Ah, Jamestown. It's always more complicated than the textbook version, right?
You got that right. First off, imagine trying to pick a spot for, well, the very first English colony in America.
Talk about pressure. No Yelp reviews to guide them.
Right. And they end up picking this swampy island, Jamestown Island. You'd think they would have scouted out a more appealing location.
Well, remember, they weren't exactly on a relaxing vacation. These were folks driven by very different priorities than we might have today. Strategic advantage was key.
Strategic how?
Think defense, navigable waters, which meant trade. They needed a place they could control access to and hopefully thrive.
So more about like location than like visual appeal.
Exactly. It wasn't about finding a picturesque beachfront property. They were playing a high-stakes game of colonial chess. Mosquito nets and, I don't know, air conditioning weren't exactly top of mind.
But even with the best strategizing, sometimes Mother Nature has other plans, doesn't she?
You're telling me it's easy to forget that back then, science was still in its infancy. These guys walked right into the worst drought the region had seen in 700 years and had no clue.
They did. Wow, how do we even know that?
Scientists figured it out centuries later by analyzing tree rings. Clever, huh?
That's wild. So not only was their location, questionable at best, but they were hit with this massive environmental challenge right out of the gate. What are the chances?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About all those hidden factors that can make or break even the most well-thought-out plans. A good reminder that sometimes it's not about what you can control, but how you adapt to the unexpected.
Okay, so we've got a swamp, a massive drought, and a whole lot of hopeful colonists. What could possibly go wrong, right?
Oh, we're just getting started. Trust me, their troubles were far from over.
All right, listeners, I can already tell this is going to be good. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a quick break.
All right, so we're painting this picture of Jamestown, and it's, well, not exactly paradise.
Understatement of the century, maybe. But it's easy to fall into that trap, to see those early colonists as just one big group. Same motivations, same struggles. But, that wasn't the case at all.
You're right. So let's zoom in a little. Who are these people who braved a perilous ocean voyage to this swamp in the middle of nowhere?
I mean, talk about a mixed bag, right? You had your gentlemen adventurers. They were all about seeking their fortune. Then you had indentured servants hoping for a fresh start, a better life. And somewhere in the mix, you have someone like Robert Hunt.
Robert Hunt. Okay, who was he?
Picture this. It's 1607. Chaos, hardship, and this guy, Robert Hunt. He's a vicar. And he's making sure these colonists find some spiritual grounding.
Seriously?
Yeah.
In the midst of all that, religion was a priority. It was for him. In fact, he held the first recorded Anglican Eucharist in what would become the United States. It's a detail that always gets me.
Wow. So they weren't just focused on, the physical challenges. They were bringing their faith, their traditions to this new world. Did that create any tension with the native Powhatan tribe?
Oh, absolutely. You can't talk about Jamestown without talking about the Powhatan. That relationship, oh man, it was complicated, full of tension, shifting alliances, misunderstandings, a whole other layer to this story.
Okay, see, now you've got me hooked. We got to circle back to that. But first, we've got this diverse group, unimaginable challenges. I mean, 2/3 of them didn't survive those first few years, right?
Yeah, that's the harsh reality. Disease, starvation, conflict. It took a devastating toll.
That's hard to even fathom, and yet somehow they persevered.
It's a testament to the human spirit, isn't it? Resilience in the face of incredible odds. And what often gets overlooked is that even with those losses, the colony, it kept growing. In 1608, a group of German and Polish craftsmen arrived.
Wait, back up. German and Polish? I've never heard that. What were they doing there?
Right. It's a fascinating little side note to the Jamestown story. But these guys were essential. Woodworking, glassmaking, agriculture. They brought these vital skills.
So they're coming into this, struggling colony, seeing the aftermath of all those who didn't make it, and they're tasked with building a future.
Exactly. Their contributions were huge. They helped transform Jamestown from, the this precarious outpost, to something more sustainable, more permanent.
Okay, so we've got tragedy, we've got innovation. It really was a mix. And speaking of innovation, you mentioned glass making. I always thought Jamestown was all about exporting raw materials, not like finished goods.
Yeah, that's the common narrative.
Yeah.
But get this, Jamestown glass became a hot commodity back in Europe.
No way. They were shipping glassware across the Atlantic. That changes things.
It does, doesn't it? It kind of flips the script. It shows you their ingenuity, their resourcefulness. They weren't content with just surviving. These colonists, they wanted to build, to create, to be part of this global market.
All right, so battling a rough environment, unimaginable losses. They're finding ways to not just survive, but become artisans, exporters. That's incredible. But something tells me it wasn't smooth sailing from there.
You'd be right about that. While they're busy building a life in this new world, external pressures are building. Forces that threaten to destroy everything.
Oh, man. Okay, now you've got me on the edge of my seat. Details, please. Okay, you got to tell me more. What kind of external pressures are we talking about?
Imagine this. You're building a house, right? Tough work, elements are against you, supplies are scarce. And suddenly your neighbor rocks up with a team of lawyers claiming you're on their land. That's Jamestown. But like, on a global scale.
Wait, what? Who else was in on the action?
The Spanish. They were not thrilled about this English settlement popping up in what they saw as their territory.
Right, because Spain had already established their own colonies in the Caribbean.
Right, exactly. So they saw any English presence as a threat, a direct challenge to their ambitions. And they weren't just going to sit back and watch.
So what did they do?
Well, there was this guy, Don Pedro de Zúñiga, the Spanish ambassador to England at the time. And this guy was obsessed.
Obsessed with what?
Jamestown's failure. He wanted those colonists gone. He was sending frantic letters to the Spanish king, pushing for a full-on assault on the colony before it could gain any real foothold.
No way. These poor colonists. They're dealing with mosquitoes, a drought, now international espionage. Talk about a rough start.
And as if that wasn't enough, they've got those investors back in England breathing down their necks. Those guys are getting impatient.
Oh, right, because they poured a ton of money into this whole venture, and they wanted to see some return on their investment. What were they expecting to see?
Think instant gratification, but 17th century style. Gold, of course. That was a given. A passage to the fabled South Sea.
The South Sea?
Yeah, what we now call the Pacific Ocean.
Ah, right, and they thought they'd find it just like that.
They did. Oh, and get this. Some even clung to this hope of finding a survivor from the lost Roanoke colony.
Talk about unrealistic expectations. So what did Jamestown's leaders say to all of that?
Well, Captain John Smith, he was in charge. And let me tell you, that guy had a backbone. He basically told the investors to cheer out.
He did?
Oh, yeah. He was like, instead of demanding the impossible, why not send us some practical help? You know, skilled laborers, tools, resources, things that would actually make a difference.
I love that. He called them out on their unrealistic demands and basically told them to get real.
Exactly. He knew that building a lasting colony, building a legacy, it wasn't about chasing fantasies of instant riches. It was about hard work, determination, and a good dose of pragmatism.
This has been fascinating. So we've got the story of survival against incredible odds. We've got ingenuity. We've got international intrigue. It's clear these early colonists had their work cut out for them. What do you think is the biggest takeaway from the Jamestown story? Why should we, centuries later, even care?
For me, Jamestown reminds us just how resilient the human spirit truly is. These were ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, thrown into this pressure cooker of hardship, forced to adapt, innovate, and overcome. And in doing so, they laid the very foundation for a nation. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just dates and battles. It's about the choices people made, the challenges they faced, and that unyielding spirit that drove them to create something new, something lasting in the face of the unknown.
It's true. The Jamestown settlement, it's a story for all time. A reminder that even when it seems like everything is stacked against you, the human spirit, it can find a way. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the Jamestown settlement.
My pleasure. Until next time.